This is lesson 39, multiplying decimal numbers for course 1. We're going to start off with this kind of an example because you'll be using these in other times. So we're going to start off with area would be length times width. So we have to take 75 hundredths and we're going to times it by 5 tenths. Now for multiplication, you don't need to line up your decimals because you'll be doing everything at the bottom later for decimal places. So you just want to make sure everything is lined up where it has a place. Okay. So this 0 is with this 7, this 5 is with this 5, and this 0 over here has nothing. Now, just to put this into perspective for a second, I'm going to do normal times tables like you will do over here, but then I'm also going to have them in fractions over here. So we have 75 hundredths times 5 tenths. Okay. Now, what this is going to end up equaling, remember when we're doing multiplication from fractions, we just multiply straight across. Okay, which means we have 1,000, okay, and at the top we have 375 because 75 times 5 is 375, okay? So we have 375 thousandths. Now notice, if you look over here, there are no thousands, there are hundredths and tenths. I'll show you how that ends up looking over here, but I wanted you to understand why we end up doing over here what we've done, because this is what's happened. You have done 75 hundredths times 5 tenths and made 375 thousandths. So 5 times 5 is 25. You put down the 5, carry the 2. 5 times 7 is 35 plus 2 is 37. So you put the 7, carry the 3. 5 times 0 is 0, plus 3 is 3. Now notice 375. This doesn't say 375 thousandths yet. I need that decimal. So how we're going to do that is you look at the numbers you've just multiplied together and you count your decimal places. I have 1, 2, 3. 3 decimal places, which means I take my decimal and I need to have 3 decimal places after my decimal. 1, 2, 3. So my decimal goes here. And I end up with 375 thousandths. Okay, that's the big difference between multiplying with whole numbers and multiplying with decimals, is when you're multiplying with decimals, you want to make sure that however many decimal places you have in your multiplication, you have in your answer. And this is why, is because this is actually what's happening, is if we were looking at it in fraction wise, it actually makes much more sense because you're timesing 100 by 10, which makes 1,000. And then 75 plus 5 equals 375. You have 375 thousandths. In decimal numbers, that is that, 375 thousandths. Let's look at another one together. If I have the number 25 hundredths times 7 tenths, I'm going to put it down here. Remember, you don't need to line up the decimal places this time. Okay, and you're going to do your multiplication. 7 times 5 is 35. Carry the 3. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 3, 15, 16, 17. And we're going to put 17 down here because 7 times 0 is just 0. There's no point in doing this 0 because it's just a bunch of zeros. Okay, so that's all we need to do. Now I have to count my decimal places. Remember, count all your decimal places. 1, 2, 3. I have 3 decimal places. 1, 2, 3. There's my decimal, 175 thousandths. Okay, remember when you're doing your answers, you have to count how many decimal places you had up here when you were timesing so that you know how many decimal places to put in your answer. We're going to do one more together. All right, so this is 2.5 or 2 5/10 squared. Now remember from the last lesson, when you are squaring something, you are timesing it by itself. So this is 2/10 times 2/10. So let's get right into it. 5 times 5 is 25. So put the 5, carry the 2. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 2 is 12. Okay, put the 0 because I've now used this number and keep going. 2 times 5 is 10. Carry the 1. 2 times 2 is 4, not 12. 2 times 2 is 4. Add 1 is 5. Add them together. 5, 2, 6. Now, before this is my final answer, I need to come back up here. I need to count how many decimal places do I have? 1, 2, because there's my decimals. These are the numbers after the decimals. So I have 2 decimal places. So I come down here. 1, 2, decimal place there. So I get 6 and 25 hundredths. Okay, always remember that you need to count how many decimal places you have. Other than that, it is exactly like normal long multiplication or normal multiplication. The difference being that you need to remember how many decimal places you have up here dictates how many decimal places you have in your answer. That is lesson 39 for course 1, multiplying decimal numbers.